Avatar, Baba, Jai.
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Farshid, thank you. That was beautiful.
Baba. Baba
Meher
says
Baba.
within things that are real are given and received in silence. So by closing the external, avenues, we can open the internal avenues. And Baba actually is doing that practically. He has closed all the external, links for us, so we can slowly open the inner link with him. He closed, India, he closed the center here in Myrtle Beach and many places of pilgrimage. So now he wants us to do the real pilgrimage, which is the pilgrimage of the heart. Allah says, the only place that can hold me is the heart. Keep me close with you. I am always there. So how easy he made it for us, to be able to be with him and be in contact with him. He started this work way back, by working on the Pramashram boys, make that inner link with those boys and kind of make those boys prepared for this inner link so that he can show the universe, the humanity, that it can be done. And for us, he's always there and we can do what Pramashram boys did. It's nothing out of the ordinary. Actually, this is the most natural way of life to be with him. What else is there? God gave us a human body. What for? Not to enjoy the pleasures of the world and live in the world and then someday die and go. This is not the purpose of life. The purpose of life, is, especially in human life, is to get closer to Him, make that link more strong, and open up the path of inner connection with Him, and eventually to be one with Him. I mean, we're already one with Him, but we don't know it. We are not conscious of it. And the only way to get conscious of it is to be purified. Once the soul is purified, then the consciousness basically is revealed. It becomes like an open book. Um, so that's, it's a natural path. The inner journey is not unnatural. It's the most natural path. Everyone goes through this journey, as Baba has said, but the soul has to get prepared. The soul has to become, um, deserve of this path. Baba gives this final love, which is the pure love of the sixth plane. But for us to get closer to that love, we have to do our own part of the work. Um, you know, I know everything is destined for us. That is true. Also, if you go back, you know that Baba made that example to the boys. And if you study the literature of all the saints and perfect masters and all that, you know that they suffered. They went through a lot of work of their own to make this preparation. So the preparation has to come for the final law. If you don't do that preparation, if you don't, water and irrigate this seed of love that he planted in our heart, in everyone's heart, then how could that seed grow and become a tree? So the preparation is necessary. Is for us to do that preparation. There is a couplet of Hafiz, it says, گر گدا کاهل بود تفسیر صاحبانه چیست. He says, if the beggar is lazy, then what's the fault of the owner of the house? Basically, that means, you go to a house for begging. If you are lazy, you don't want to beg, you don't want to knock at the door, you don't want to ask, the owner is not going to give you anything. So you got to be persistent, knock and beg and persist. And our way of begging is begging Baba, by repeating his name, by remembering him, begging of him, by talking to him in our inner life with him, that Baba, please help us, help us all to love you more and more and more and more and still yet more, till we become worthy of union with you. So that worthiness, we have to beg. We have to beg to become worthy. And he did that through all the Pramashram boys. He did that through Esfandiar. Esfandiar, oh gosh, he was a fire. I mean, what can I tell about him? What can I say? Those who met him, they knew by sitting next to him, you could feel the love emanating from him, and that was enough. I mean, um, there was no really exchange of words um, to be sitting with him. You didn't have to exchange any words because everything was really happening inwardly. Although sometimes he would, explain things if you would ask him, but it wasn't really necessary. Uh, I remember my younger sister Gohar was with Esphandiar in Canada, and I traveled there to go see him. At that time, I was living in the West Coast, and I went to this place that Esfandiar was staying with my sister, and I just went there and sat and didn't say a word. And my sister was saying, "Oh, you traveled all this, path coming here, all this way, and why don't you say something?" I said, "There is no need of me saying anything. Just being here and sitting next to him is enough." Um, because you could really drink the wine of love, the pure wine of love, with this Pramashram boy, this Esfandiar, that I had the experience with. And some people, after he passed away, dropped his body, they asked me, "Do you miss him?" I said, "Yeah, in a way that I never could drink a cup of wine that I drank with him. I miss that too." So that's how he was. I don't know. There are a lot of the stories of him and his
Farshid?
past. Yes.
Sorry, Farshid. There's been a few people who are frustrated because the sound is a little fuzzy.
Of this.
You have another microphone or something? Can you use the.
Yes.
Are you on a computer?
I am on the computer and I don't have a good microphone. I bring it a little closer. That might help. Does that help any
Well,
better? Is that any better?
the
Or?
microphone you're using is on the.
Oh,
On
it's
your.
on here. The microphone is on here. Let me pull this out. It's filled now.
Is that better for people?
Yeah. Okay. I'll,
Okay.
I'll put this up and raise the sound of the computer. Hopefully, I can hear you better too. Okay. Well, let me stop here and see if anybody has any particular question that they want to ask. Then we can elaborate on things, or if you guys want to hear of a particular story, or I don't know really what you all want to hear, but please give me a hint. I mean, I can go on, but I want to see what the audience wants to hear.
If anybody wants to raise their hand digitally, if they have a question for Esfandiar, I'm so sorry, Farshid.
Yeah. I do. I can't hear. Option Y. There we go.
There you go, Betty. You're up.
Okay. Um, I just wondered, can you hear me?
Yes.
How did it come about that you became the person who was his, I don't know what you call it, more than translator, his companion. How did that happen?
Oh gosh, it's all, I think, Baba's plan, first of all. This much I can tell you that when I was born in Iran, um, I knew of Baba even when I was 5 years old. Um, there was a picture of Baba in my grandfather's house that I was living for a couple of years. And then my father brought me back to Tehran. I stayed with my parents. I remember the time that my father went to India to meet Baba in 62 and 65. And then my father would take all of us to the meeting, which was on Fridays. Fridays was holiday in Iran. So he would take us to the meetings. Most of the meetings would be in Esfandiar's house. And I remember as a kid, we loved, to go there, eat mulberries and kind of, be around because he had a nice orchard. And we would go and, enjoy the cherries and um, the mulberries and strawberries and all that. But in the meantime, we would hear about Baba, we would see his pictures. It didn't really click on me or dawned on me who really Baba is and what his expectation of us is until I was like 17 years old. I had finished high school. I had an accident with a motor that they were going to cut my foot off. And I was really in a bad shape. But miraculously, although I begged Baba, actually, I fell at his feet. I said, Baba, if you save me from this, chaos, I would believe, who you really are, that you say you are. And miraculously, I don't want to go into the detail of that because it's a long story. I was saved. And I was going to college at that time, and I started reading of Baba's books. I had a lot of hearsay from people, one say, oh, Meher Baba brought another religion. And because I was in the Zoroastrian family, and a lot of people, they didn't believe in Baba in the Zoroastrian community, and they thought that he's brought another religion, and we are not Zoroastrian anymore and all that. And I started reading his books, and slowly I realized that there is nothing about religion in his words. All he talks about is how to get closer to God and how become one with him, one with God. And by knowing this, I got more interested in going to the meeting now in a real sense, to Baba's meeting, and really find out, um, what Baba brought. And I didn't know, although I had grown up as a kid being around the Esphandiar, I didn't know much that, what his relation was with Baba, what his, his state of spirituality is, nothing of that nature. But I can tell you, in one of those meetings, they were reading from Meher Baba Calling, and the saying was, if you have the piece of a frozen lake, you will realize me. And thank you. When this was being read, I looked around the room, as a youngster, as a kid, to see who has this piece of a frozen lake. And my eyes fell on Esfandiar. And I saw him with his closed eyes, beaming and in a state of stillness, like a frozen lake, so peaceful. I said, if anybody has a piece of a frozen lake, is this man. This is what I told myself. Anyway, that house started, and then I remember the meetings got even more intensified at Esfandiar's place. He had we would go to the mountains Friday mornings, early in the morning, together with a bunch of kids. A lot of them, my sister is there. I see her, my older sister, manager, and Bob. See you. Good to see you. So anyway, um, in these meetings, one of them was actually God Speaks meeting. So God Speaks meeting was that Dr. Farhad Shafa, sometimes Mehdi Ghaffari, who had, had education in America, had come there, and their English was good, so they would translate, and we would all chip in um, as a reader and a little bit of translation and knowing some, learning a little bit of English. Basically, we would join, and Esfandiar even would join, and he would read with us. God speaks, and it was blissful. It was just so blissful to be there in that house and around him. And then it came the time that I graduated there, and the war had started. Um, and actually, no, the war hadn't started. There was this, this was, yeah, the revolution had started in Iran. And my parents told me, well, you better get out of here because, if you don't want to get killed. And I didn't have a choice how to get out, but Esfandiar, because, they wanted some financial support. And Esfandiar actually put that financial support for me through my cousin. He put the money down through my cousin because it had to be a relative to support me. So he gave the money to my cousin. My cousin put the money down, and I got my visa and got out of the country. So how I didn't know. I mean, I grew up in a remote village in Yazd, not knowing, and look at how the karma or the karmic connection brings you to where Baba wants you to do his work and be with him. So he brought me here. I started my education here a little bit, and then I remember my younger sister would call, and Esfandiar would get the phone, and we would talk over the phone sometimes, and he would say, "No matter what you do, don't forget Baba." And my experience was that even if I would forget about Baba, Baba would not forget about me. So he would always grab my neck somewhere. So I would say, I tell Amu, if I forget Baba, Baba doesn't forget me. I know that. And it just went on. And in 90, end of 90, um, my sister called from Iran that she wants to go to India with Esfandiar, and I should go there to translate. Now, one other time I went to India, I guess it was 86, and one other time that Esfandiar was supposed to come, but they didn't grant him the visa to come because of some difficulty that he had with his son in that time. Um, so he couldn't make it. And I was in India with my sister, and she went back to Iran. But this time, she said, "No, we got our visa, and we are coming to India, and you have to somehow come to India." So there is a long, long, long story behind all this. But just to make it simple and quick, is that I got the visa, went there, had a great time being with him and um, Esfandiar. Let me tell you this, that I had read in God Speaks that any soul on the planes can bring other souls to their own level. And also I'd read that Esfandiar was on the third plane of consciousness when he was in Paramahansa. So I thought, oh my God, he whatever plane of consciousness he is now, he, well, he can maybe help me. So anyway, I went there and we were in Dharamsala, that it was his school in the old days. And in the, we were doing some little meditation, and after the meditation, he was very cheerful and started talking, and I thought would be the best opportunity to jump in and, see what he can do for me. So I told Esfandiar, Amo, heard that, you were on the third plane of consciousness when you were in India. And when you were in Premasho. And I don't know what your stage is now, what your state is now. And also I read in God Speaks that any soul in the planes, they can bring other souls to their own level. So can you do that? And he said, he put his hand in his pocket. I remember he had brought, he would bring sometimes, put the pistachios, raisin and all that in his pocket. And he would come on the veranda, sit with Muhammad the Masked, and he would give him a little bit of that. And Muhammad was cheerful and laughing, and they both would laugh and, kind of watch each other. So anyway, he brought some of that out of his pocket and said, it's not like this that I put this in your hand. You have to work. And then actually the whole thing started. Then he said, now that Baba has revealed my identity through you, maybe it's time for me to talk. And then he started one of his first talk in Mehrabad, in the lower Mehrabad, close to where Muhammad sits, or actually, no, maybe on the veranda of, no, this was, right in front of the Dharamsala. He started talking about his school, how he came to Pramashram, and how, Baba accepted him as a Pramashram boy and took him up to the upper Mehrabad and all that. So that was the talk that he made, and I translated for him with my little English that I knew. And then Peter Booth at that time got a visa for him to come to America to be in the Los Angeles Sahavas, and then Port Townsend Sahavas in Seattle. And then, anyway, he traveled through America. In that trip, I translated for him when he was in Port Townsend because I was not able to travel. And then he left, and when he came back the next time, my sister had talked to him, and he had said, well, he likes me to translate for him. I said, okay. And Baba made it all possible to be able to take away from work and come, to be with him. And for me, it was a feast of love. I mean, well, what can I say? It was a great opportunity to run away from the world and come and, enjoy the spiritual atmosphere and be with him. And that's how, all started. Every 6 months or so, he would come to the center here in Myrtle Beach. And, I did a lot of, not only translation, a lot of staying with him, being with him. But the main thing is emphasized, was love. He said the love is the alchemy for getting the iron within us to become gold. And Baba, at the time of Pramashram, he said, I can make gold out of you. And the reason he said I can make gold out of you is to change or clean all the garbage that is within us, so the shine of the gold can shine. Basically, the gold can shine. Right now, the gold is there. The jewel within us is there. The problem is that it's covered with a bunch of accumulated sanskaras through all the life that we had as, gaseous form all the way to mineral and to vegetable, worm and fish and, animal and all human being that we went through and all that. So all these sanskaras are layers and layers of sanskaras that has covered this jewel that is within us. So to let that jewel become uncovered and shine, the layers have to go away. And the only and best way can, that also Baba says, is love. Now the love has also different degrees. I mean, the love can start by repeating his name as he, told the boys to do, by keeping silence, only thinking of him and nothing else. And that love can grow and intensify and remove all these layers one by one, one by one, one by one. Then you can feel within yourself that your intuition goes up to the level that you can feel and see the unseen. And that is a quality of God, actually very much normal. And then as this uncoveredness continues, you thread the inner path from, from gross plane to the subtle plane, planes of, first plane, second plane, third plane. You won't stay too much on the fourth plane because it's too dangerous. And then Baba, as long as you are with him, he will help you to the fifth plane and sixth, and until you become one with him. You basically see yourself as you really are. You see yourself as you really are. So you're not becoming really something. You see yourself as you really are. We are one with God, but we don't see that because of all these layers and layers of sanskaras. Hafiz has a very nice couplet about that. He says, غبار ره بنشان تا نظر توانی کرد. He says, چهره یار ندارد نقاب و حجاب. غبار ره بنشان تا نظر توانی کرد. He says the image or the face of the beloved doesn't have any cover or veil. You have to settle the dust of the path to see that image. So the dust of the path, that's a problem. The dust of the path, which are the sanskaras, are the problem. And once that is settled, it's going to naturally reveal everything for you. So that I deviated a little bit. I hope I answered your question.
I just wonder if you have any more hafiz for.
Anyone?
Any more hafiz?
Oh yeah. There are a lot of favorite couplets of Hafiz that Esfandiar would say. One of them was, I remember we were all talking about, education and the worldly education. And people asked him, you went back to Iran, Baba sent you back to Iran and said, go do my work. I am there with you also. And what happened? Where did you go? He said, I went to Yazd and, his house. And then I made a little room and I would meditate a lot of times, be with Baba. And then, but what else did you do? Did you, help your father? He said, yeah, if my father needed any help, I would help him. And then we said, did you study, went back to school or anything? He said, no. And then people asked, why didn't you study? He said, what can I say? My beloved didn't want that. Then he said this couplet: نیست بر لوح دلم نیست بر لوح دلم جز الف قامت یار چه کنم حرف دیگر یاد نداد استادم. So what that means is that there is nothing on the surface of my dil, which is, you know, the inner being, the seat of the soul, or the heart. There is nothing on the surface of my heart except the image of the beloved. What can I say? My beloved didn't teach me anything else. There were a lot of, you know, other favorite couplets of his that he would recite. The couplet actually that brought this awakening within him, that what he's searching is not really becoming a doctor or engineer or, you know, following a worldly life, because this was his image, you know, that when he goes to India for the free school and education, he can, you know, study to become a doctor or an engineer. But when Khosrow Afzari or, you know, Rao Sahib, who was one of the Mandalis, recited a couplet from Sadi's book. Sadi was a saint, was a second plane conscious saint at that time. So, but anyway, he's got couplets. But this couplet says, رسد آدمی به جایی که به جز خدا نبید بنگر که تا چه حد است مکان آدمیت. So what he says is that a man to a point that does not see anything except God. So see how high the abode of human being is. When this, you know, couplet was read to him, he said, "Is that really true?" He started questioning the, you know, the teacher, the Mandali, you know, really this is the purpose of life, you know, that man becomes God, will see God. Then Rao Sahib explains more that yes, this is the whole purpose of life. That's the whole purpose, that we take this human form to become one with God. And then he says, well, if that's the purpose of life and that's the goal, why am I here to study? I don't want to study. I want to run away and, you know, go to the forest, think of God and find God. So this couplet, you know, was the beginning of this awakening in him that brought him to search for God and to become one of the first, actually the first Paramashram boy. And then later on, other boys slowly joined in as the Paramashram boys.
Thank you. Rosalie has a question. Go ahead.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Rosalie, how are you?
I'm echoing to you all.
Yeah, we do have an echo. Computers might.
I don't know. Well, anyway, my question is, Baba had his accident. He said it was ordained by God that he should have it in the United States.
Right.
And I find it so interesting that he had Esphandiar over here so long. Many years he was here. And it was such a grace I met him, could be around him. He was so beautiful. He definitely, I used to say, there's a song, The Look of Love. He had the look of love in his eyes. I mean, you know, you're so beautiful. Anyway, I was wondering if there is some words of Baba. I want to say if he ever said anything about such a thing. It says, let the world see the dual show of destruction as the mercy game in realization of truth. Let the head be calm and the heart see free. Life is good as it is. Life is real as it is. Life is my work of realization. I also feel that America has a special destiny because Baba spilled his blood here. And it's just kind of a mess now. And I was wondering if Esphandiar, if anything was said, you know. I know it was just focus on Baba, of course. Yeah. Yeah. But was anything else said?
Well, one thing I remember he said was that God is never changing. All else is ever changing. So, you know, the life of humanity, if we go back to the history, has always had ups and downs and ups and downs. And this is his game. He puts this life, this illusory life, through trial for the humanity to go through to, you know, awakening. So he wants to awaken souls when he comes on earth as the avatar. And this is his work of, you know, awakening. And what can we say? It's his game. Let him play it. For us, really, there is nothing to worry about any chaos that happens in the world. All we have to do is to think of him and love him, know that the purpose of life is to become one with him, and it's all illusory. So if it happens, let it happen. Don't worry about it. This was always something that he would say. I remember we were in Los Angeles in one of the meetings talking, and suddenly the earthquake started. And everybody, you know, ran out or ran under the table and all that. And he was, you know, sitting, working for the state. They had always taught us, if there is an earthquake, jump under the table. So I took Amu's hand and I said, Amu, do you want to go under the table? He said, what for? I said, an earthquake is happening right now. He said, well, let it happen. Don't worry about it. So, you know, for us, we have to be like a frozen lake. Nothing to sway us and nothing to shake us. You know, we have to be so firm in his love that really nothing should matter. And really, to be real, really, you know, looking at it in the real way, is that once you are, you know, stationed in his love so firmly, the rest doesn't really matter. I mean, it's his game. He is playing it. He actually said all the, you know, politicians are like puppets in my hand. So let him play with his puppets. Why should we even think about it? Why should we even waste our time to worry about things like that? Let him take care of his game. We are just the observer and maybe a player. So let's play our part well. Our play is to love him. Our part is to love him as much as possible. So let's do that. I remember there was a question of Esfandiar, okay, how much should we love him? How should we love him? He said, love him to the point that there is nothing else you could do to love him even more. So this is what we should look at, the degree of that love that we can have for him.
Farshid, do you have a name, Amor, or can you say your name for him?
Yeah, Amu. Amu in Persian means uncle.
Oh.
He would, he was closer to an uncle for me than my blood-related uncle, because I was more with him than with my blood-related uncles.
Ah, sweet.
Let me tell you this now. This was kind of interesting at the time, and Rosalie kind of gestured to that being with the Esfandiar was really a pleasure and a blessing, and you could feel his vibes so clearly. We were in Los Angeles Sahabas, and those who have been there, I know Rosalie has been there. There was a photographer, if you remember, that would come and take photos of the group at the end. He came to me, and he didn't know, he knew a little bit about the meeting of Mayor Baba every year that he would do the photography, but he didn't know anything about the Esphandiar. But he came to me and said, you know what? I have seen two holy men in my life. Two holy men in my life. And this is one of them. He didn't know anything about the Esphandiar, but he said, this is one of them. So even a stranger, can feel the intensity of that love. That's why Baba, when he was traveling, he had to travel incognito. He had to veil himself actually to be able to travel, because people unconsciously, unintentionally would get absorbed to him. And if he would travel openly, nobody could take his eyes off him, or not to notice him, and he wouldn't be able to do his work. That's why he would go incognito. So this was, Esfandiar was a great gesture of love of Meher Baba. He was a good sample. To me, and many, many others too that I know, he was a good example that Baba sent to America and also to Iran, to feel his love, to feel who really Baba is. And I really envy those who met Meher Baba in physical form, because they were the real blessed one. The blessed one. Well, I guess my 45 minutes, maybe even more, is done. I'm going to stay back and let Amu and kind of come in and try to share their stories too. Unless there is a particular question, I'm going to stay back. Jai Baba.
Jay Papa. Well, this is your chance. Anyone? Yes, Miguel?
Hi, Farshid.
Yes.
Lovely stories. I can hear your stories over and over, and more. And I would expect to hear more stories, even today. The time that you came first to Mehrabad to translate Esfandiar, I was there. And I remember him sitting with a group on the Dharamshala, and just sitting there with all the people around him, and in the dining hall as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was touched by him. He was very soft, soft. He was very soft and loving and glowing. And before he left, I knew he was leaving that day. I don't know how I knew that. And so after lunch, because he was leaving after lunch, right? At that time. And he went out, or it was a meal time. I don't remember if it was lunch or evening. And he was leaving, and I left. I sort of followed, and to say goodbye to him on the veranda. And then I was sitting on the veranda, and I think it was, you said Gohar is your sister, the one who is in Canada?
Yeah.
With the white hair?
Yeah.
With the white hair, yeah.
Gohar is the younger one. He's in Iran right now, but he's coming to Canada.
Yeah, I didn't know she was younger than you. Anyway, she came back from Farshid with white cloth to give me. And I was very, very touched because I felt that in Mehrabad, always the Iranian people and the Israeli people got along very well, especially well in Baba's love. They especially connected and especially played sheshbesh and had fun together and talked together and all that. So I felt that Baba was working on the Iranian-Israeli problem when this was happening. So when he gave me that cloth, it was very, very special for me. And so it's still kept safe, but it's in my house in Mehrabad.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Bob, do you want to say something?
Dear Bob?
Yeah. Sometimes I put Farshid on the spot and he puts me on the spot. And people have heard this story, and what Farshid said about, I think everybody that's on Zoom right now, on this little session, we all have our little special moments with Baba, and sometimes they may only last a few seconds or 5 minutes or 5 hours. But Esfandiar's moment was when Afsari said, you know, you can become one with God, right? And Chodi Baba's moment was when Baba said, I will make gold of you. And in the book, The Boys, that's referenced in the book. And then in the appendix, you will actually find the day that Baba said that. And that you never know the trigger. You never know the trigger. And it comes sometimes unaware to you, like you, even when you're not seeking it, Baba will give you these special moments or special hours, and working on this book has been such a blessing for me with Farshid. If Farshid doesn't mind, I love the one story, and I don't know if we told it adequately in The Boys when I think it was Esphandiar and Darwin, and Farshid was weeping because of some interchange or perhaps their embrace. And when I think the session was over, Farshid, and you were walking through the threshold, maybe behind Esfandiar, and he turned to you and he said, he took that special moment of yours and told you what it was. So I'd love to hear that little snippet if you can remember again. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, that, you know, it was an occasion in Deruba. I remember it vividly. I was sitting right in the middle of Esfandiar on my left and Darwin on my right. And Esfandiar would say something, so I would translate it for Darwin. Darwin would say something, and I would translate it, you know, to Esfandiar. And there were some audience, you know, some small audience sitting there. And then Esfandiar said something that I was translating, and I couldn't hold myself. It was so, the intensity of that love and blessing was so much, the bliss was so much that I burst into tears. And then Darwin asked me, why are you crying? What's going on? I said, Darwin, I miss Baba's physical presence. And Darwin, laughingly, he said, I do too. And then after that, nobody talked, no exchange of words, nothing. Everybody went into this deep, thinking of Baba and meditation and loving him. Um, I would say it lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And then suddenly Summer, who was caring um, for Darwin at the time, broke the silence and she said, Darwin, we need to leave because I remember you have to take your medicine and I don't have your medicine here. So Darwin said, yes, we have to leave. And he got up and Esfandiar got up to greet him off and people slowly, walked away. And as I was, holding Esfandiar and helping him because he had a broken hip to the door to say goodbye to Darwin and Darwin was leaving, Esfandiar turned back to me and he said, did you feel this presence? And I said, yes, Namo, I did. He said, this is Baba's presence. This is the presence of God. So practically, they showed me how being in Baba's presence is, or being in the presence of God. That was the end of it, basically. It's good to see you. Do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Farshid.
Thank you.
That covers it.
I see stories. He's been with Esphandiar, with Darwin. Jeff, you want to share anything?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, Esphandiar came to the center a number of times, and if you happened to be in the room with him, the whole room would be filled with Baba's presence. I mean, it was so, I don't know if I would say intoxicating, but it just stopped. The whole room, everything stopped. Even though you were moving, at some level you were stopped. You were kind of in your own soul, being with him. And I remember he used to, in the beginning, he used the word meditation. He would go into a state of meditation. And we eventually settled on the word communion. He would go and experience this communion with Baba. That because meditation has this other it has a great many connotations, but communion seemed to fit the state that he was in with Baba. And one time when I asked him, well, how do you get into that state? And he said, you have to leave your mind at the threshold in order to go into that realm. And he said, when I go into that realm, I see I'm in the ocean, the divine ocean of love. That I experience that. But if form comes into the picture, every form is Baba. So he's going from ocean to shore, from the ocean of divine love in that state. But if any kind of form, if the mind brought a form before him, every form was Baba. So not a bad place to be. I remember asking him, do you experience Baba? Do you see Baba in others? And I remember, Farshid, you translated this. He said, what he said in Farshid, in in Farsi, and you translated it, I have not yet attained to that high state. So what an incredible thing to, this was on his, I think, his first trip to the center. But, you know, that just shows the Mandali who were able to see Baba so completely in us, so fully in us, what state that they must experience. But he was very frank, you know. I mean, he brought out the Baba and others, but he said, I have not yet attained to that high state. What an incredible thing even to contemplate. Let's see if I can think of anything. Oh, that when you got Darwin and Esphandiar in the same room, it was like having a 500-watt bulb in a closet. I mean, you don't need that much wattage. And it was like Einstein and Leibniz in together with some of their students. You know, it was really, they were incredibly large souls, so aware of Baba at the deepest level. And it was, boy, I mean, just talking about it, I can feel that expansiveness. In fact, we used to call Esphandiar expand you are. You expand.
Yeah.
Because he certainly did expand your little melodrama being in his presence. So anyway, that's my sharing.
Yeah, what you said reminded me of a couplet that he would recite quite often, actually, talking about the mind, and you have to leave your mind, you know, at the threshold. This couplet of Hafiz he would recite. He said, جناب عشق گه بسی بالاتر از عقل است. کسی آن آستان بوسید که جان در آستین دارد. What that means is that the abode of love is way higher than mind. And the one can kiss that threshold who has his life in his sleeve. Basically means his life is there and he's willing to throw it out. Basically give up that life. That person can kiss the threshold of love. So you can see how high the abode of that love is for one to be willing to give up his life. Thank you, Jeff. I see Judy is there. Judy, Jai Baba.
Hi, Farshid. Great to see you, and thank you so much for bringing back to my heart, I assume everyone else's heart, the utter sweetness and simplicity of being with Baba through us, Esfandiar. I feel really blessed to have had so many special times with him and to have shared so many of those with you up in Canada and in Seattle and Myrtle Beach and LA Sahavas, etc. But for me, my most special memories of being with Esfandiar are, I don't know the exact year, early 2000s, when I was living over at Mehrabad and had samadhi duty from 4 to 6 every day by Baba's grace. And it was because it was tea time, virtually no pilgrims came up, hardly any villagers. It was still working or kids getting out from school, etc. But the company that Baba gave me during a several month period, every day, was Esfandiar and your sister Gohair walking up the hill to Samadhi at virtually exactly 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, it would be 3 of us. I would sit, you know, there's a seat for the person on duty that looks directly into the samadhi, and Esphandiar would be on my left side and your sister on my right side. We would sit in Baba's presence for that time together that felt so timeless, as if
Indeed.
really we were abiding in Baba in eternity.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's,
I see my sister Manija is there too. And she has a lot of stories with Esfandiar. Maybe, I don't know if Gohar showed up or not, but Gohar showed up. Oh, oh Mernaz, I heard Mernaz is here. Mernaz, you've been with Baba, I mean with Esfandiar, also with Baba all your life, so you might want to share something too. Please, Persian people are there. I don't see them, but if they can join in, that would be nice.
Jai Baba Farshid Jan, خیلی ممنون. Thank you.
Jai Baba.
That was beautiful. It brings back so much memories from our childhood at Amu's house, right?
That's right, yes.
Oh, thank you so much. We always enjoy your talks. One thing that I would love to share is that my earliest recollection of Amu, I used to stay with him sometimes when I was a child at their home. And also, Amu, as you said, he always stressed how we must love Baba. But I was a child, you know, I didn't understand these things. We just knew him as Amu Esfandiar. And, you know, we just loved being with him at his place. But my earliest recollection, as I said, was about 5 or 6 years old. And it was early morning. You know, Amu, he used to go, you know, to water the orchard, abiyari kardan. He used to, you know, have to go very early to open up the water gates. So, you know, his orchard and the other orchards like Shirin Khale, like Shirin Vahidi, or my dad's orchard, they could get water too. So I was there and he said, why don't you come with me? I was very happy to accompany him. I, you know, just got up and hurried out with him, and he had his hoe. I don't know, این چیزی که آبو باز میکنن چیه ابزارش فرشید جان؟ hoe, is it called hoe?
Yeah, the hose, the faucet, the
No, it's a special instrument, what you call it?
The
it's
valve?
Not no, it's something like a, opening. Yeah. There was a tool on, you know, that cuts the grass.
Yeah.
That long thing with a stick that cuts the grass. That they open up the way. So he had it with him, and we walked down to the bottom of the orchard, and he was cutting all the grass that was holding the water up. And he told me, he looked at me and he said, Amu, look what I'm doing. I'm removing the grass, and this is how the water can go through. And our mind is the same. We have to cut the unwanted thoughts. They have to be cut away so the water, the soul, the light of God can come in. And that I didn't quite comprehend it then, but that kind of echoed in my mind through the years. And I feel it. I feel that, you know, his presence was a big blessing to all of us, you know, in Iran. And it just, you know, the seeds that he planted in all our hearts are flourishing. And you're a beautiful example of that. Thank you, Farshid.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, Jeva. I see Gohar joined in. I don't know if she can talk a little bit about Gohar. Can you hear us?
It appears that the mic isn't on. Like there's no mic with Gohar's name. So that means that when she signed or he signed in, that the she didn't get an attachment with the audio portion. If she signed out and signed back in, maybe that would work.
Manager, do you remember anything while Gohar is trying? You have to unmute yourself. Anybody else?
Well, we do have some hands up. Meher Prasad.
Oh, Mer Prasad, Jai Baba. Yes,
Jai Baba Farshid.
Jai Baba.
I remember one of the times that we were meeting in your home in Seattle. We were, Esfandiar's presence was so powerful. Divine love just poured out into the room, and we were all basking in this love. And I didn't really want that to break, but he would keep on asking, does anyone have questions? And one time I remember he was talking about how this whole process was gradual, and he was going on talking about it. And I became very impatient hearing that. And I said, just how gradual is this process? And before you could translate that, he laughed at that question. And that was something that I still remember. And then, I don't remember exactly his answer, but I remember that instance.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I remember at a lot of times the question was asked, and before I could translate, he was giving me the answer because he knew what the question was, although not knowing any English, because he would read the heart. And actually, I tested him once. I tested not only him, I tested Muhammad the Mass also. Because Muhammad, you would, if you were thinking of things of the world, Muhammad would tell you, Jao, out of here. So I wanted to test that. So I went and sat there once and I started thinking about, Jao, things of the world, basically. And he looked at me and he got mad at me and said, Joe. And I left. Next time I said, I'm going to go sit there and try not to think of anything except Baba. Just remember Baba and image Baba and see what his reaction is. So I went there and sat closer even to him and started thinking about Baba and repeating Baba's name and imaging Baba. And I saw him looking at me and laughing, looking at me and laughing, and looking at me and laughing. And he was so joyful, seeing, within me that I'm so think of the beloved. And the same thing happened with Esphandiar. I tested him not only once, many, many times. Whenever I would think of the thing of work, he would look at me in a strange way and he wouldn't pay attention. And then when I would think of Baba and nothing else, he would be very joyful. He would just beam, like this is what you need to do. Amazing how, when the soul becomes purified, how the soul can see, not with the external eyes, with the inner eye. Sometimes, at the end of his life, let me tell you all this, because that was his message to me and everybody, before I forget. I remember the last time I saw him, he didn't pay much attention to me. And later on, I found out why, because he didn't want me to be too attached when he leaves. But his last words were, you know, I said in Persian and then in English. He said, Dardel Badel. So simple. Dardel Badel means within your heart, with your heart. He said, love Baba in your del, with your del. So the mind has to go. Mind has to stay away. So all that action of love, all that loving comes through the heart, some comes through the del. So this was his last message, that he, try to love him within your del. And as a kid, when he was in the Paramashram, he would see Baba eyes, but with the inner eye, he would see Baba approaching even that water tank. He would see Baba through that thick wall. He would that he's coming, he's approaching. And as soon as I would open the door, Baba would walk down the stairs to me, and Bader was holding the lantern. And then he would remember that all the time, and he would cry. So this was another gesture of him to me, that you have to let your heart, you have to make your heart burn with the love for God. Once you are burning your heart with love for God, then you are cleansing and you're getting closer to Him. So he revealed to me at the last of his life, because he was remembering that last moment that Baba would come to him and he would embrace Baba's legs, and then Baba would put his hand on his head and then ask him some questions. Sometimes wouldn't say anything, would stay there, and then he would jerk his feet, and he knew that Baba wants to leave, so he would let him go. But he was remembering that to burn himself, to burn his love for Baba. And that he taught me practically. That's how you should be. You should try to think and image him in a way that you are like a fish out of water for his love, for him. When you image yourself like a fish out of water, that you cannot breathe without him, then the purity will come. Then the purification starts. So remember this, that intense love can burn away the veils of illusion. The so many veils that is covering the soul. So this is what we have to all remember and try to go into that intensity, so we can get closer and closer to him.
One last thing, Rosalie has her hand up, so if it's all right, I don't want to wear you out.
Farshid, I didn't know if you mentioned it, but it always struck me so strongly at that point that Esfandiar, he said he felt so much power, and he made a decision to use it. He could love God more with that power.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you mentioned it, but yeah.
Yeah, this happened after the promotion, and many years later that he had married and he had kids and all that. And what happens is that one night he had, his hip was broken, and his wife's hip was broken too. And his wife was calling for help to go to the bathroom, and he couldn't help, so he calls to his son to come and help the mother, and his son was sound asleep. So within that agony of him and his wife, he decided just to think of Baba and go deep into the inner communion with Baba. I think the son eventually comes and takes his mother to the bathroom, but he was in this meditation that he sees and feels infinite power within himself. And the power was so overwhelming that he says, well, let me use this power and see if I can lift this book off the shelf. Yeah, so he thinks and that he's going to use that power and lift that book off the shelf. But as he uses that power, he says, no, he can't do it. Then he says, well, you know what, let me use this power and to see even if I can love him more. So he channels this power into loving Baba. And he said, when I started loving Baba, I went to such a deep love for Baba that I saw myself swimming in the shoreless ocean of love, and there was not me anymore. He said there was not me anymore. It was only Baba and that love. And so he could use that power. And then he said, I lost myself. He said, through that power that I used to love him more, I lost myself. So I remember the question came that, you lost yourself, how come you're not lost? I mean, you're back here now in the body, sitting with us. He said, well, the still leftover sanskaras pulled me back, basically. But he said, the art or this work of love, I can lose myself in that love, in him. And he said, this is, indirectly, he said, this is the pure love that a fifth and a sixth plane saint has. And was to all of us, not for himself even, that we should see where we are and where we can be. Basically, this is the love that he said, I want every one of you have eventually. And that's what we have to strive, to lose ourselves in Baba and to be merged in that infinite ocean of love.
Or should Goher has a microphone now, so we have audio. If Goher would like to speak, that would be great.
Good, yeah. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Goher. Goher, unmute رو بزن، صحبت کن اگه میتونی. مرناز هم ترجمه میکنه برات. Hello. I don't know if she can. Oh, okay, she unmuted. Goher.
جای بابا.
جای بابا.
Hey, Baba.
همونطور که میدونید فردا روزی هستش که ایشون با بابا یکی شد. ساعت 11:45 فردا، 11:45 ظهر به وقت ایران، و واقعا جاش خالیه. و فقط من یکی از چیزایی که همیشه یادم میاد این بودش که همیشه میگفت که من وقتی که از یزد اومدم تهران و توی کاشانک بالای کاخ نیاورون بودم، در اون موقع من 22 ساله بودم و انقدر عشقم به بابا زیاد بود و منو میسوزون که توی اون برف‌های کاشونک من کف کفشم رو در می آوردم و توی برف راه میرفتم تا یه مقدار خنک میشدم و اون آتیش هم کم میشد، اون سوزشی که داشت. ای بابا.
بابا مرناز شما ترجمه میکنید لطفا.
Say again?
Mernoz is going to translate. Mernoz.
Thanks.
Amu's going to Baba is tomorrow. The exact date at 12 o'clock. Am I right on that, Farshid?
The speaker is low volume.
Can you hear me?
No, not very well.
Okay. Go ahead and translate then. Let me try. Can you hear me? How's the voice? Is this better?
It's better.
Okay.
A little bit low, but it's a bit better.
Okay. So Gohar was saying that tomorrow is the exact date of Esphandiar going to Baba at 12 p.m. And she would like to say what a privilege it was to spend so many years with him in Iran and also traveling with him. She also said about a memory that Esfandiar, when he was 22 years old, he traveled from Yazd to Tehran and he resided in northern Tehran, which is called Shemiran, or the region he was in was named Kashanak. So he had such intensity of Baba's love that he would feel so warm and hot, that it was so much warmth that he had to take off his shoes and walk barefooted in snow just to cool himself down. The intensity that he felt within, and it just was felt so much outside. And Farshid, this reminds me of his Baba Tahir story, Baba Tahir Oryan, when he wouldn't believe, and in Yazd he was sitting and traveling to deliver the medicine for his sister. You know, he was traveling on the donkey. You remember that story, right?
Yes, yes. Go ahead and say it, yeah.
No, you go ahead. You say it so beautifully. Please share.
This is the story that a lot of you might have heard, but there was a saint, or actually a perfect master, called Baba Tahir Oryan. Means his name was Baba Tahir, but Oryan in Persian means naked. So he was naked. Alayer, he was sitting on the top of a mountain that was snow all the time. And his life story is that love within him was so much that the snow melted and the spring flowers had grown up. And then Esfandiar reads his life story. He says, this is all nonsense. He throws the book away. Because he says, you know, how could love melt the snow? He said, you know, the ice, the water goes into the pipe, and when it freezes, the metal pipe bursts and is broken. How could a human body melt the ice? So he wouldn't believe that. He'd throw the book away. Until it happens that his sister gets sick, and he was in Yazd at the time. So his sister gets sick, and he tells his mother he's going to go to the city of Yazd to get medicine. But to go, he basically had to, there was no means of travel in those days except a donkey. So he covers the donkey with layers of, you know, warmth and all that, and he puts under layers of, you know, underwear and basically shirts and sweaters and jackets on the top of jacket. He covers himself so much also. And then he sits on the top of the donkey and heads towards the city of Yazd. While going, the snow was so, he said the snow had finished, snowing, but the blizzard, there was a lot of going through the snow that was on the ground and basically covering the whole area. And he said that my whole body and head was covered with the snow, and I became like a statue of ice. And he said my breathing started to get shallower and not be able to breathe properly. My heartbeat was getting slower, and I felt my dying soon because it was so bad, so cold. And the donkey wouldn't even move. He said I would get off the donkey and try to pull. The donkey would back towards the house, basically. He would back up instead of going forward. But he would say when I would sit on the top of the donkey, he would, at that time, he thinks of Baba. Suddenly he remembered that, Baba, you promised me that I come and see you one more time. And here I am dying. So how could I see you one more time again, And then he feels that. He said it was like someone with a big bucket of water, hot water, pouring on my head, because I started feeling heat from the top of my head all the way to my toes, and the snow started melting, and I, would clean up the melt and all that. He said at that time, I was so hot that the donkey got hot, and the donkey started going towards the city. And then I felt that I am in this rose garden. I was, smelling the fragrance of the path and the melody of the inner journey and all that. And he said this outer journey became so pleasant. And I went to the city of Yazd, got the medicine and came back. And he said for a few days I was coughing, but I didn't get sick or anything. And then he said, yes, I remembered about Baba Tahir Urian, and I remembered, and I realized that, yes, a human body can, through love for God, have that heat coming or oozing out, basically. That heat can come out and help. So he then realized that Baba Tahir was such a saint. So that was the story. The story of Baba Tahir is actually interesting. Maybe I should say that because Esfandiar would say that once in a while. The story of this Baba Tahir is that, as a kid, he was a very simple person. He wasn't illiterate. He didn't know how to read or write. And one day he goes to the mosque, and it was in the winter time. And in the mosque, boys are sitting and reading Quran and reciting Quran and all that. He said, how did you guys learn Quran? The simplicity. And these guys wanted to joke around with him. He said, this ice, you see this ice in the pool? He said, yes. He said, we come in the winter, break this ice and dive into that water. And that's how we get, the education. We learn how to read Quran. With his simplicity, he believes that. So one night when it was so cold and, it had frozen, that pool was frozen, he gets an axe and comes to that pool, breaks the ice, and dives into that water. It's funny, but this is the truth. And he jumps up because it was so cold. And then he starts his first couplet. He actually wrote a lot of poems. He his first couplet was یک مو ندهم یک مو ندهم به صد دنیا, or something like that. He says, I won't give a hair of my blanket to the whole world. That was so cool that he says, you know, couplets like that. But it's interesting, actually, when Esfandiar said this story, my wife, Marjan, had a dream of Baba Tahir that same night. And in the dream, she was an interviewer. She was interviewing Baba Tahir. So she was interviewing Baba Tahir. She asked Baba Tahir, how did you get this divine knowledge? He said, you know, that dive that I did in that pool, God helped me, and I gained that divine knowledge, and I became what I am today. And that was a fact. The simplicity of humanity, human being can bring, you know, that love. That's why we have to be simple in our life and try to love him as much as we can. Thank
Esfandiar.
you, Lornaz. Yeah, you remember the nice story.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Please, anybody else who is family or who can share anything, join in. Go ahead if you have anything else.
I remember this meeting at the Mayher Center, and the people came in for the meeting, and he was on the stage as Esfandiar. This is probably one of his last visits here, group, and he didn't talk, and he didn't talk, and he didn't talk. He went on like the time of the meeting, not talking. I think you were there. I thought it was you that was supposed to translate. But it was like so perfect because he didn't really believe in talking. You know, he was there sharing his focus on Baba, you know, but people started leaving the meeting because they were used to talking. You know? Anyway, it was kind of Baba's joke in a way. It was kind of, when I think back on it, I thought, well, good for him, you know. He wasn't pressured into talking, you know.
Yeah, he wanted to show all of us the practicality of, you know,
Right.
Baba. And that meeting, I remember that Shirin also got a little frustrated and he said, Amu, you know, talk. And Shirin told me, you go up and talk a little bit. Amu said, no, just sit here, sit here. And we all sat, and then she told Amu, you know, why don't you want to talk? Why don't you talk? I said, no, just sit, just sit and let's say nothing. Let's just remember Baba and think of him. So he wanted basically to do a practical session with everyone present without talking. And that is what we all need to do, you know, to think of him, to love him. So it's good to some extent. I mean, talk and think and thought is all good to some extent, but once you get to the threshold of love, all this has to stop, and will stop eventually. Naturally, it will always stop, and it's just you and the beloved, and you and your inner communion with the beloved.
Go ahead, Michal.
That is a beautiful share. But also when you talk and you tell these stories, it comes through the heart. So talking these stories is also very beautiful. It comes through the heart. It's felt in the heart.
Thank you.
So yeah, Rosalie, it was very nice that you shared that. And Farshid, I really liked the story that you were sitting with Sandhya on one side and Darwin on the other side, and between these two beings, course you would be Baba this way. Thank you for all your stories. I always love when you share stories. Thank you. Thank you, Esphandiar, too, for all these things. And Baba.
Very Baba.
Yeah.
Also, I think I remember being near him physically, Esfandiar, and when he would laugh, it was so wonderful. He wouldn't laugh on and on, but man, it was just like this a beautiful moment, you know. He had, you know, that sense of the Leela somehow, God's Leela. And yeah.
Yeah, he had a good sense of humor. Yeah. I remember in one of these meetings, somebody said, you know, Amu looks like this and that. I said, no, I think Amu looks like a lot like Baba. Then people said, how could? I said, well, you know, whatever you think of, you become like. And he thinks so much of Baba that then I remembered a friend of mine had a chicken farm, and a chicken. So I told that to Amu. I said, you know, Amu, this is my friend had a chicken farm, and it became like a chicken. He laughed and laughed and laughed. So yeah, whatever we think of, we become like of. So how blissful and how good it is that we think of the beloved, and we see the beloved and image him. So we all become him. And that's the normal process. It is not only for Esphandiar. He said, this is not only for me, it's for everyone. Every soul will have to go through this path one way or the other. There is no alternative. So he assured all of us that there is no escape route. It might be delayed for one here and there, but eventually that soul has to go through this path. So with that said, what there is to lose by thinking of Baba. So we should think of him more and more, and until we are no more, as Eric said. So only he remains.
Anyone else? This is your chance.
I'm so glad I don't have a pig farm business.
What is it, Mir Prasad?
I'm glad I don't have a pig farm business.
Oh, yeah.
But I really want to thank the Mandali that were with Baba and Bauji that I love so much. Their beauty was that they were actually passing to us this beauty. And Baba was passing it to them, and they were passing it to us. So it's just amazing to be with them. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Baba.
Yes, thank you, Farshid. It's been a lovely
Yeah, Baba.
time. Thank you.
Very Baba. Thank you all. Thank you for coming and sharing. And it was so wonderful.
Can we have a moment of silence?
Farshid, what was the year that Esfandiar passed?
Gohar can answer that question. I think, what was it?
I think she may have left.
She left.
Was
It was
2005. 2005.
the Persian calendar.
2005 Farshid Jan.
2006.
I'm hearing a whole lot of
2006.
2006. Thank you. Thank you,
actually,
Farshid.
it was November 24th, 2005.
That's when he,
2005?
yes, November 24th
Uh-huh.
in Iran.
2005.
Well, thank you, Farshid. This has really been wonderful. I feel like we finally had another Seattle Baba meeting. Our group misses you, and I in particular so much since you've flown away well, actually you left from my house and headed to Myrtle Beach. But at any rate, Jay Baba, this has been really wonderful.
Hey, Baba, give my love to everyone there.
Farshid, what about being on the porch with Esfandiar and Mera being there? Were you present with Esfandiar and Mera, Baba's Mera, being on the porch at Merazad?
You know, I don't remember. I remember being with him and Mera being there, but I don't remember being with him on the porch. I remember the year that, you know, we went in 1977 to India together from Iran. And that was the time that 18 of us Iranian traveled with him. Mernaz was one of them, my sister Manija Goha. There were quite a few people that we all traveled to India. Esfandiar, met Mera and Mani and, you know, other Mandalis. And that was the only time that we all were together when Mera was there. But I don't remember, or I don't have that image with him and Mera on the porch. I don't remember that. But I remember one thing though. He complained to Mani, Esfandiar complained to Mani about why she or the Mandalis have permitted people to use the room next to the Ramsala as a bathroom. I think it was women bathroom, and he didn't like that. So he told Mani, you know, why people use that as a bathroom, because this was Baba's office at the time of Pramashram. You know, the Dharamsala, the school, and next to that was Baba's office, basically. Baba would go there and be there. So he didn't like that, so he complained that to Mani. I remember that vividly. And, you know, and I remember Mani's reply was that, well, you know, Baba, which we use Baba's facility at different times for different things. So that's how it happened. Yeah. But that was a nice trip. It was a long trip. There was no pilgrim center or you know, no place to stay. We stayed in in Ahmednagar. A lot of us stayed at a hotel called Dowlat Hotel, which doesn't exist anymore, I think, or it's a ruin. And then a few of us would stay in a Shuka hotel, and then we would sometimes take rickshaws, go to Mehrabad. We could stay in Mehrabad, I think, you know, in one place for 3 nights or something like that. And then we had to come back again. So, but it was nice. I remember even the rented bike sometimes. We would bike all the way to Mehrabad and come back. It was a good time. They had actually placed the foundation for Pilgrim Center at that time.
Rashid, I have a question.
Yes.
Esphandiar always talked about love and loving Baba, but he never talked about suffering. Do you recall anything that he said about suffering? Not the physical suffering that he went through, but other types of suffering, like, moods and things like that, or when he would miss Baba, or what he's going through internally.
Well, he did. Actually, I remember at one of those sessions, they asked him, do you still suffer or is all bliss? And he said, no, I still suffer. And then we asked him, why do you suffer? What's the cause of it? He said, cleaning, this process of cleaning of the sanskaras um, is basically is joined with suffering. Sometimes you have to go through suffering of cleaning the sanskaras. One other thing I remember, he said, when one person breaks his bone, the bone is broken not through an accident or whatever, that is getting rid of a big sanskara, and that also is a big suffering. And so I think for now, I didn't realize at the time, but now that you said, actually, he broke his hip, and through that he really suffered. But going back and think of it, he passed the stage of third to the fifth, because when you think of it, when he went to use his power to lift the book off the shelf, he couldn't do it. That was Baba protecting him, so he doesn't abuse his power. And then when he started using that power to love Baba even more, that he lost himself in that love, Baba brought him back to the third and pushed him off to the fifth plane, because the fifth plane is the love is pretty much complete, and the love is pure. And when he was swimming in that ocean of love, that was a gesture that he was on the fifth plane at that time when he experienced that. So, so the suffering of his hip breaking helped him to break that barrier uh, from the third plane to the fifth plane. And Baba didn't keep him on the fourth plane at all. Maybe momentarily when he felt that infinite, power within him. But because the bliss is so much, when one treads the path, the suffering really is not experienced that much, because that this suffering, this temporary suffering that you go through, is is for a cause, and the result is good. So the soul really doesn't entangle or get attached to that suffering too much and takes it lightly. Let's put it this way.
Anyone else? Farshid, thank you so much for this time that you've given us today.
Thank you, Baba.
Remembrance of Baba, yes.
Whenever our time is over, please cut us off.
We've got plenty of time. We don't have to get cut off, but we could certainly have some silence if you wanted it.
Yeah. We can do 5 minutes practice inner communion with Baba. So think was in your heart or dil, be in Persian and some, I guess it's Urdu language. Dil is the same. Is the seat of the soul. Is where you really feel that love. That's where the dil is. So in your dil, with your dil. So try to image him in your dil and love him with your dil. So don't think of anything, but image him within yourself and love him within you.
Jai Baba. You're muted. Farshid, you're muted.
Beloved God, help us all to love you more and more and more and more, and still yet more, and become worthy of living with you, and help us all move past the Baba Nilivarian. Avatar Mir Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Mir Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Mir Baba Ki Jai. Jai Baba.
Thank you so much for your time. Such a wonderful Baba.
Time is up. I think our time is up. Thank you for Angela and the group to give us this time to share Baba's love through remembering Esfandiar. Thank you again. Jai Baba, it was such a wonderful joy to see you all and to share love. Jai Mer Baba.